Good evening. The Platting Board will come to order. It's May 21st, and it is 6:31 p.m. May we have roll call, please?
Mr. Story? Mr. Abel?
Here.
Mr. Fuller?
Here.
Mr. Young?
Present.
Mr. Cole? Mr. Kange?
Excused.
Mr. Edmondson?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here.
Ms. Enix? Here. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a quorum tonight. Do we have any agenda changes tonight? No. No agenda changes. Good. Okay. We have approvals for action summaries of Wednesday, April 2nd, 2014. May I have a positive motion to approve the action summaries? Mr. Cole and Mr. Walker seconds. Is there any opposition? Hearing and seeing none, the motion carries and the action summaries are approved. We don't have any minutes tonight. Ooh. The next order of business is special order of business disclosures. Are there disclosures tonight?
Yes.
Mr. Walker.
As to case S12066-1, City View subdivision, I have represented the property owner in the past. I still have a number of cases I've been collecting in judgment status. They're all minor matters. Litigation on them transpired more than 7 years ago. I have not received any new cases from him in the past 7 years. I've had nothing to do with this property or any of his property developments in the past. I feel that I can be independent and fair in this matter and would ask for a motion directing me to participate.
Thank you. May I have a positive motion directing Mr. Walker to participate? Mr. Cole. Mr. Cole, would you state your motion?
Thank you. I having heard the testimony, I would move to allow Mr. Walker to testify. It does not appear that there is that he's a party to any litigation or that he's to benefit, and so it does not appear that there are any reasons for him not to participate in that matter.
Thank you. Is there any opposition to this motion? Hearing and seeing none, the motion carries. Mr. Walker, you're directed to participate. Are there any, in case S12066-1, City View subdivision, is there any other disclosures tonight? Well, I only have one tonight, so I'll make mine. In the same case, S120661 66-1 City View subdivision, Lot 1, Block 31A. My firm has business dealings with the petitioner on another matter. We have no, we're not working on this property. We haven't worked on this at all. I have no financial or personal interest in the matters before the board tonight. I can remain impartial in fact and action as a member of this board without personal bias. My past involvement and personal interest will not prevent me from fairly evaluating the facts of this case. May I have a positive motion directing me to participate, please? Mr. Cole and Mr. Walker seconds.
Based on the information that the chair has provided, I would move to direct him to participate there does not appear to be any, he doesn't have any outcome in the meeting, no direct relationship, and he's indicated that he can view this fairly and objectively, so I'm move to direct him to participate.
Thank you. Are there any, is there any discussion? Is there any opposition to the motion? Hearing and seeing none, the motion carries. I'm directed to participate. Thank you. Next item on the of special order of business is informational items, abbreviated plat. Are there any comments on the abbreviated plats that were submitted? Yes.
When will you open it up for public comment on S-1206 discussion item?
We're getting to it. It will be.
I can barely hear you, so.
Thank you. Is that better?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Probably within minutes. You can count them. Okay, next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, and this is a time extension for case S11943-2. This is not for a public hearing. May I have a positive motion to extend the time or grant the time extension, please? May I have a positive motion to accept, Mr. Fuller and
Yes.
Mr. Edmondson. The positive motion I'm looking for is for the entire consent agenda,
Oh, okay.
for approval of the entire
Move
consent
to approve the consent agenda for 210-14, 310-14, 47-14, 414-14, 428-14, and 512-14.
Mr. Fuller, it's one line down from that. It's
Oh.
item number D, which is
Okay.
it is the time extension, but what I'm asking is that we approve the
understand.
consent agenda, which is item D1A.
In case S11943-2, move that we grant the time extension for that case.
Is there any opposition or discussion? Before I say the motion carries, Mr. Fuller was the mover, and was it Mr. Walker was this, or Mr. Edmondson was the second? And the motion carries. It's the consent agenda is approved. We're now to old business. The procedure by which the public may speak to the Platting Board at its meeting is: 1, after the staff presentation is completed on public hearing items, the chair will ask for public testimony on the issue. Persons who wish to testify will follow the time limits established in the Commission Rules of Procedure. Petitioners, including all of her representatives, have 10 minutes. Part of this time may be reserved for rebuttal. Representatives of groups, community councils, PTAs, etc. have 5 minutes. Individuals have 3 minutes. When your testimony is complete, you may be asked questions by the board. You may only testify once on any issue unless questioned by the board. Any individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the Platting Board takes. Appeal of this decision or any of the conditions is governed by AMC 21.11.304. The decision of the board at the scheduled public hearing shall become final 7 calendar days after the date the decision is made on the record, unless a written request is submitted to the Planning Division prior to the expiration of the 7th day to prepare a written decision based upon the record made at the hearing, and the request is accompanied by a written notice of intent to appeal. Adoption of the written decision by the Platting Board becomes the final appealable decision. Within 20 days of the final appealable decision, an interested party must file with the municipal clerk either a written notice alleging new evidence or changed circumstances per AMC 21.11.503, or and appeal of the board's final appealable decision per AMC 21.30. The first case under new business is public hearing is case S12066-1 City View subdivision. May we have staff's presentation, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This preliminary plat is a request for subdivision of 4 lots into 1 lot. The plat requires a public hearing because the elimination of the interior lot lines would result in an increase in the permitted residential density of the area being subdivided, which is required to go through a public hearing process. The petition site is zoned R3 multifamily residential district. The proposed lot meets the minimum lot size and width required in the R3. West 14th Avenue is currently a strip paved section that lacks curb and gutter and pedestrian amenities. This does not meet the municipal standards for an urban area. With the time frame of developing this lot uncertain, the improvement should be required under any pending land use or a building permit process. The unnamed alleyway is currently a non-standard gravel section that also does not meet the municipal standards. If the alley is going to serve as an access, the applicant should construct it to municipal standards, a typical alley section along the northerly property frontage as shown by the typical section detail 20-5 of the Anchorage Municipal Standard of specifications under a building permit process. To ensure that the possible improvements are reviewed under that building permit process, the petitioner should be required to add a plat note to this plat that states, quote, prior to the issuance of any building permit, improvements to West 14th Avenue and the unnamed alley should be evaluated by the municipality of Anchorage, unquote. With that being said, staff would like to recommend approval of the plat for 18 months subject to the conditions listed on pages 5 and 6 of your staff packet. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions of staff? We'll now begin the public hearing portion. Would the petitioner's representative please step forward, state your name, and let us know if you'd like to reserve time for a rebuttal.
Good evening. My name is Ken Ayers, A-Y-E-R-S. I'm with Lounsbury and Associates, representing the petitioner tonight. I'll reserve a couple minutes of rebuttal time. Essentially, we're in agreement with staff on their recommendations and have no objection to those. And as staff mentioned, this is really pretty straightforward vacation of interior lot lines, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. You have 7 minutes and 32 seconds for rebuttal. Are there questions of the petitioner's representative? Guess not.
Thank you.
Anyone wishing to testify from the public? Now's your time.
Now's my time. My name is Laurel Coombs, C-O-O-M-B-S. I have reviewed all the planning staff analysis reports, and I have concerns regarding the change in zoning code for these parcels. Currently, the Vista Grande LLC apartment homes, DBA City View Apartments, have serious parking issues that, according to the aforementioned report, traffic personnel are aware of. The property is in close proximity to a secure property, the AWAC shelter. I live on B Street and 13th. My front window faces right out across to the AWAC shelter. So this is from my own personal experience. Many times I have watched traffic from the City View Apartments come very close to endangering the safety of the women with small children as they walk from the front entrance facing B Street, then along B Street and up 13th to the secure entrance located near the end of the street. They don't obey the speed limit signs or seem to have any regard for these women and small children's safety as they race past them. This as much of a concern is in the summer months as it is in the winter, when parking is at a premium because of snow mounds and berms. These women and children are walking in the street, so yes, I'm very concerned. If the intent of the owner is to provide adequate off-street parking for the current structure of Vista Grande DBA City View apartment homes, then I have absolutely no objection. However, if the intent of the owner is to build on this lot, thereby increasing the parking shortage, the ever-present safety issues already mentioned, and increase the population density in a sensitive area, then I would have to say I object with my whole heart.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for Ms. Coons? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to testify? State your name for the record and spell your last name, please.
Good evening, Zach Armstrong, A-R-M-S-T-R-O-N-G. And I didn't get your name here, but that's one of the main reasons I've come down here too, and I haven't got a chance to review what the whole plan is. You know, from what I can see on the paper that I got here in the mail, they want to combine 4 lots into one, but then it doesn't say what they're going to do, and I'm assuming they're going to build a bigger apartment there. You know, makes sense. I'm not really objected to that. My question is, again, you know, as she mentioned the parking, it's a mess there. It's already too congested, you know. You know, how many units do they plan on putting up there? Is it going to be another Vista Grande, which is right, you know, on the other side of it? I mean, that is a total mess. You know, they've made some improvements there, but I mean, there's parking issues. You know, there are trash issues outside. Their dumpsters are always way too full. I mean, just issues like that I have. But again, mainly it's the parking. And then they mentioned they were going to do some improvements to the road. What improvements would they be? Are they going to pave the alleyway? Are they going to make off-street parking on the 14th Street? I don't really see that there's even, I don't know that that's possible. I mean, with just the amount of area that's there. I think right now each unit is zoned R2 or R3. R3, I believe. Is that right, R3? So that's 16 units if they're going to put a fourplex on each one. So are they going to combine it and make a apartment that's 16 units, or are they going to try to double or triple that? You know, with more people, parking is just going to become more and more of a problem, and that's a huge issue for me. Let me take a look at my notes here and see if I have anything else. And then, you know, the other thing, like I said, I don't know if are they going to be condos? Are they going to be apartments? Are they going to be, you know, a big house? You know, I don't know. I've never been to one of these things before, but I don't know if those questions can be answered before before the assembly approves to combine these 4 lots into one, or do they just combine 4 lots into one and then have another hearing? You know, how does that work? I don't know.
Thank you. The process is, some of the questions that you've raised are not questions that we were here to answer tonight, and so we don't have that information, but possibly the petitioner's representative can address those. Are there any questions for Mr. Armstrong? Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to testify tonight in this matter? Okay. Mr. Ayers, I made a mistake. You have 9 minutes and 32 seconds for rebuttal.
Thank you. As far as what the petitioner's ultimate plans are, they don't have a specific design ready to go forward onto this property. You know, it is 4 lots, but 2 of those lots were half lots. So I think the allowable density that was actually on the property that we're talking about was 12 units. With this elimination of the lot lines, I think the total number allowed is 17 units. They would be required to have all off-street parking with any new development. Parking in the area, particularly across the street at Vista Grande, is an issue, and the petitioner recognizes that and has been working with the community to try and make it better. So having said that, I don't know what the ultimate plans are for the property. They don't have a specific design or anything that they've shared with me at this time. I do know that if they do build on that lot, 17 units is the maximum under the zoning, and they would be required to provide all their off-street parking to serve those units. So with that, I'd also be happy to answer any other questions of the public following the meeting if I can.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions or any questions for the petitioner's representative? Do you have a question?
Yes.
Then you should go.
Sorry.
You have my permission. Mr. Cole, I'm sorry, I didn't see your request. Go ahead.
This is for the staff. I'm reading the memorandum from the traffic division on this, and it noted several recommendations subject to, that it suggested being subject to the following. And I was just curious why they weren't part of the staff's recommendations or the department's recommendations. And then I'm going to ask Mr. Ayers if he has a problem incorporating those.
Through the chair, Mr. Cole, yes, this is one of the issues that as a planner we have to deal with sometimes. There are two agencies tasked with determining the level of improvements that may be required under a subdivision, traffic department and private development. If I could kind of point you in the direction of private development's comments, that would be on page 2.
No, but that's your summary, but what page in the packet?
No, that is page 2 of the packet.
Oh, okay.
So that came directly from private development, and their recommendation was to, because we don't know the timetable for development of this parcel or the resultant parcel, that we address the improvements at that time. Traffic gave a different requirement, and as a planner, it's our responsibility to kind of weigh the two comments and make a determination as to what seems appropriate. In this particular situation, staff, myself, determined that it was more appropriate to require the improvements upon construction or development of that property under a pending building permit. We can catch it under a building permit, and if the level of development there is such that requires improvements to that right-of-way in that alley, then we can certainly do it at that time. So that's why I made the determination.
Does that address the second? Does your recommendation incorporate or address section B of the traffic division's concerns? I understand the alley, it does.
Yeah. Through the chair, Mr. Cole, the traffic impact analysis and parking study would likely be required under the development of the site. So prior to the issuance of a building permit, the traffic department may require a traffic impact analysis. I don't think it's appropriate at this time to require a traffic impact analysis without knowing what level of development is going to happen on that site. So I think, from traffic's perspective, they would require that under the review of a building permit.
Thanks. I mean, the reason I ask is because when I look at our recommendations, I see, like in number 3, resolve the AWWU field services, the need for a private system review. We say the same thing in number 4. We routinely make as a condition of our plats that people address the concerns in one of the divisions, and it's just, I'm always kind of at a loss as why sometimes we do it and sometimes we don't. That's why I asked for this.
Through the chair, Mr. Cole, you're 100% correct. A lot of times as a planner and looking at these developments, we have to make judgment calls. And in this particular case, I felt like delaying the improvements to a point when development occurs is the most appropriate. So that's why I did what I did.
Does your analysis change now that we've heard two people from the public come in and complain about the traffic in the area?
Well, I would say not. As Mr. Ayers pointed out, with development of this site, they're going to have to provide, the parking in accordance with Title 21. It's going to be off-site parking, off-street parking requirements. So, I mean, I'm not sure that putting in curb and gutter is necessarily going to, reduce the parking congestion that you'd find on that street right now. With the development of the site, they are going to have to provide off-street parking to the level of intensity that their development is going to provide. So I'm not sure that putting in curb and gutter and improving the strip-based street is really going to improve the parking situation. So
my last question is, will people in the public who have a concern about this have an avenue to go and talk to somebody before this at some stage?
Through the chair, Mr. Cole, unfortunately, there is not a public process from this point forward unless the use proposed on site requires a public hearing. So let's suggest, and this lady out here had suggested that, possibly it was a parking lot that could go there. A parking lot in the R3 district would require a conditional use, which requires a public hearing. So in that instance, yes, they would have the opportunity. But if the property owner was to develop the property in accordance with Title 21, a by right use, and just simply get a building permit, then no, there wouldn't be an avenue for the public to go in and testify or voice their concerns.
Mr. Ayers, has anything about our conversation changed your presentation at all?
To the chair, Mr. Cole. As I said, they haven't shared any specific development plan, but I do have a couple comments here that I'll throw out there. Under the current zoning, 17 units, you're talking about a maximum of 150 trips a day to this facility. Under the building permit process, the municipality wields a very big hammer as what they can actually require of a developer. This development would have to conform to current code, and they would have to provide all of their parking off-street. There would be no allowed on-street parking for their use. So whatever parking is required by code is going to have to be off the street. I think the issue in the area is that when Vista Grande was built, the parking standards were much different, and it's a very large facility, and it puts a large tax on the street. Like I said, the petitioner, working with, understands that and is trying to rectify that situation. They put a lot of money into that building very recently, and I think it was a huge improvement to the neighborhood. If you look at the development that Widener Property does around town, Park Place just down the street here is a very good example of the type of development they do. It's very good. As far as a public process, there really isn't one, but the code, I think, will address most of those concerns.
Thank you. Mr. Edmondson.
Probably have a comment, question for staff, so through the chair, staff. There's been some discussion about the property across the street and the project across the street that recently had some remodeling done to it. What's different about that particular property, and why additional parking wasn't required in that permit process versus what would be different in this case on the property we're here to discuss tonight?
Through the chair, Mr. Edmondson, I could, quite honestly, I could only guess as to why improvements weren't required. Typically, road improvements aren't required under a building permit process, but because this is an undeveloped property, that may have an impact on the neighborhood, that with development, we recognize that improvements may be required, but because we don't have a timetable for, and I'm sure Mr. Ayers can attest to this, we don't know when this property may be developed. It may be next year, it may be 10 years in the future. And to come in and require that they improve a right-of-way now when their development may be 10 years in the future, staff believes that it was a bit premature. I can only speculate as to why improvements to that right-of-way weren't required under the building permit that was done during the remodel. I don't know the extent of the remodel, and quite honestly, I don't know the problems associated with parking on that site. I mean, I think traffic probably and private development may know better than myself. So I can only speculate. So I apologize for not giving you a clean answer, but that's all I've got.
I guess, to maybe clarify some of the discussion too, another question I have for staff through the chair is, it seems to me that the parking issue has to do with the property across the street, which we're not here to talk about tonight. That's what's causing the problem. And I understand your perspective, and maybe you can just comment on this. We're not here tonight to talk about that piece of property and that project and the parking problem that we have, and you don't have the ability, I don't think, to generate a condition that would require a parking study on a piece of property that is not associated with this case. Is that correct?
Through the chair, Mr. Edmondson, you're absolutely correct. I mean, I think that we really need to focus on the subdivision that we're here to review or that you're here to review tonight, and that's the 4 lots into 1. I recognize the fact that there is a parking issue out there associated with an existing use, but unfortunately, we don't get to address that tonight. We have to address the subdivision that's in front of you, in front of the board, and whether that particular subdivision conforms to Anchorage Municipal Code. So,
thank you.
Any additional questions? I get to ask mine now.
Thank you.
Wait. My turn. I have a question, Mr. Ayers. On the for staff's analysis and their recommendation, excuse me, they state prior to the issuance of any building permit, improvements to West 14th Avenue and the unnamed alley shall be evaluated by the municipality of Anchorage. Do you have any objections to moving that into the recommendations?
Mr. Chairman, I believe that is one of the recommendations.
Oh, okay.
Essentially, I think that's covered.
Okay, it is item 5E. My mistake.
No, 5A.
Oversight. Yes.
No.
Well, that was okay. That's the answer to my question. It's there. Although, well, I think then it would. I wanted to know if it was discussed prior to me reading the recommendations. So you don't have any objection to item 5E?
We have no objection.
Thank you. I have no more questions.
Thank you.
You may sit down. Any more questions? That's it? I'm going to close the public hearing. The public hearing is now closed. The matter rests with the board. May I have a positive motion in this case, please? Mr. Walker. And Mr.
As to case S12066-1 City View subdivision, I move to approve the plat for 18 months subject to conditions 1 through 6 on page 5 and 6 of the staff presentation.
Thank you. And Mr. Edmonton seconds. Mr. Walker, will you speak to your motion, please?
I find the testimony of Laura Coombs and Zach Armstrong as being credible about an existing traffic problem in the area that is caused by a neighboring piece of property, and that those issues aren't, even though they're owned by the same company, even though the two properties are owned by the same company, don't have a bearing before the matter before us, and that the decision that we have before us is whether or not to convert 4 lots into 1 lot for a separate parcel of property across the street. I find that the staff comments and preparing the file adequately resolve the issues of the property owner's right to remove those lot lines, and I believe we've done what we can with respect to protecting the public's interest in making sure that a burden that is placed by this property on the traffic in the future must be addressed by the municipality of Anchorage, and that's provided in provision 5E. I believe that in the building process or building permit process that traffic issues will be addressed. I also find that the existing requirements that we now have with respect to high-density housing and the requirement for off-street parking is more robust than it was when the property across the street was originally developed. Back when most families that would rent property probably only had 1 car, and now many of them probably have 2, which is probably one of the primary contributing factors to the problem. Accordingly, I would move that the plat be approved.
Thank you. And Mr. Cole?
Thank you. I likewise am probably going to vote to approve this, but I just want to say that I'm not convinced with the explanation I've got. And I will just say that when the public comes down here and makes a presentation like this, and we have in our package a comment from traffic with conditions in it, I still don't understand why we don't accept the recommendations of the traffic and put them in just like we did in, or are doing in numbers 2 and 3. And that would be to work with traffic. This is not something that just 2 people from the public came into. It was specifically noted in our package for this particular section. But I do rely on staff. They make good decisions. I'm happy to rely on this. We appreciate your coming in and giving your presentation. I'm sure that the owners are going to, they say they understand the issues that are going on, and we take them at their word. We want to thank you for coming down. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion or questions? Mr. Edmondson.
I'd just like to say I'm also going to be supporting the motion tonight, and appreciate Mr. Cole's comments and appreciate the comments from the community. But I can say, from my own personal experience, that essentially a parking study will be done as a part of the building permit process. It will be the burden of the developer to provide the required parking for whatever they develop on the property, and that's just playing part of the building permit process that you have to go through, or your permit won't be approved. So I do think there's a process in place for that in this particular property. I wish there was a way that we could help address the parking concerns on property across the street, but that's not what's before us tonight. So anyway, I want to thank Mr. Cole for his comments and the community, and appreciate you being here, and thank staff for evaluating this, and so I'll be supporting this. Thanks.
Thank you. Any additional comments? I'm going to make one, but it's pretty much in line with what we've discussed. There's 2 issues that I understand tonight. One is potential traffic, and the other is parking. And and I think they should be looked at separately, and they will be. And from my understanding from staff tonight is that a traffic analysis may be required depending on what the development is proposed, which hasn't been formulated yet. So when a development is put forward, traffic department will decide whether a traffic impact analysis is needed or not. And since parking is going to be off-site, I think that the parking issue from approving this plat tonight will be resolved. Maybe not, as Mr. Edmondson said, from what's going on across the street, but from this development, the city's most likely going to hold them to stringent parking so that it would be adequate. So I will support this also. Is there any opposition to this motion tonight? Hearing and seeing none, the motion passes. Thank you. Any individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the planning board takes. Appeal of this decision or any of the conditions is governed by AMC 21.11.304. The decision of the board at the scheduled public hearing shall become final 7 calendar days after the date the decision is made on the record, unless a written request is submitted to the planning division prior to expiration of the 7th day to prepare a written decision based upon the record made at the hearing, and the request is accompanied by a written notice of intent to appeal. Adoption of the written decision by the planning board becomes the final appealable decision within 20 days of the final appealable decision. An interested party must file with the municipal clerk either a written motion alleging new evidence or changed circumstances per AMC 21.11.503 or an appeal of the board's final appealable decision per AMC 21.30. Are there any persons to be heard tonight? Do we have any reports? Okay, good one. And what's the date again? The July. Are we having a June meeting on the first Wednesday of the month? We will. Okay, and on the July meeting for the board, so everybody knows, it's going to be on the 16th of July instead of the 2nd. Okay, any board member comments for tonight? Anybody wishing to offer a motion for adjournment? Mr. Cole, second by Mr. Walker. Meeting is adjourned, and it is 7:14. Thank you, everyone.